Lydia Frost stood frozen in her $10,000 designer gown, staring at a chessboard where her king lay toppled by a woman in a janitor's uniform. The entire charity gala had gone silent, watching as the most feared real estate mogul in the city got checkmated in 2 moves by someone she had just called the help. The clicking of phone cameras filled the air as guests captured what would become the most viral moment of her career, and the most humbling. But let's rewind to how this impossible moment began. Lydia Frost owned half the commercial real estate in downtown Chicago. At 35, she had built an empire worth $3 billion, crushing competitors with the same ease most people swatted flies. Tonight's charity gala was just another tax write-off event where she'd write a check, shake some hands, and leave early to review acquisition reports. She stood near the silent auction tables, diamond earrings catching the chandelier light, when she noticed something odd. A woman in a gray janitor's uniform was quietly moving between tables with a cleaning cart, but she had stopped near the chess demonstration area. An elderly man was explaining chess strategy to a small crowd, making what looked like a terrible move. No, the janitor said softly, barely audible. If you move your knight there, you're walking into a fork. Try the bishop to queen's knight 4 instead. The old man looked annoyed at being corrected by staff, but when he made the suggested move, his opponent immediately resigned. The small crowd clapped, but the janitor had already moved on, her young daughter trailing behind with a book clutched in her small hands. Lydia's curiosity turned to amusement. This could be entertaining. She approached the woman, noting her name tag read Ayanna. The child, maybe 8 years old, looked up with intelligent brown eyes that seemed far too mature for her age. "Excuse me," Lydia said, her voice carrying that tone of authority that made CEOs nervous. "I couldn't help but notice your chess advice back there." Ayanna paused in her cleaning, straightening up. She was beautiful in a natural way that Lydia's surgically enhanced friends could never achieve, with warm brown skin and kind eyes that showed no trace of intimidation. "Oh, I'm sorry if I interrupted anything," Ayanna replied. "I just saw a mistake and—" "Do you play?" Lydia interrupted, already forming her plan. "A little." The modest answer made Lydia's smile grow wider. Perfect. Nothing would amuse her wealthy friends more than watching her demolish some janitor who probably learned chess from a library book. "Zoe, stay right here with your book, okay?" Ayanna told her daughter, who nodded and settled into a nearby chair. Word spread quickly through the gala. Within minutes, a crowd had gathered around the demonstration chess set. Lydia could hear whispers behind her. This was going to be social media gold. The billionaire CEO playing chess with the cleaning lady. "Tell you what," Lydia announced loud enough for everyone to hear. "Let's make this interesting. Beat me in chess and I'll give you one of my investment properties." She paused for effect, her voice dripping with condescension. "What would you do with it? Open a cleaning company?" The crowd chuckled appreciatively. Someone was already filming. Ayanna said nothing, just sat down across from Lydia with quiet dignity. Her daughter watched from her chair, book forgotten in her lap. "I'll even let you go first," Lydia said generously, settling into her seat with the confidence of someone who had never lost a public bet. Ayanna moved a pawn forward 2 spaces. Standard opening. Lydia responded with her favorite aggressive opening, bringing out her knight early. She'd learned chess at an expensive boarding school and had crushed plenty of business rivals across corporate chess sets. This would be over in 10 minutes, maybe less. Ayanna's second move seemed random, just another pawn pushed forward 1 space. "That's it." Lydia laughed. "This is going to be even easier than I thought." She moved her queen out aggressively, already planning her victory speech. The crowd leaned in, expecting to see the janitor crumble under pressure. Then Ayanna made her second move. "Bishop to queen's knight 5. "Checkmate," she said quietly. The word hit Lydia like a physical blow. She stared at the board, tracing the lines of attack. Her king was trapped. Every escape square was covered. The queen she'd moved so confidently was actually blocking her own king's escape route. It was impossible. No one got checkmated in 2 moves unless they were a complete beginner, and Lydia Frost was many things but never a beginner at anything. That's not. Lydia stammered, looking around at the sea of shocked faces. Phone cameras were everywhere now, capturing her confusion, her growing humiliation. "Fool's mate," Ayanna explained gently. "It's the fastest possible checkmate in chess. You have to make exactly the wrong moves for it to work." The crowd erupted in whispers and barely contained laughter. Lydia felt heat rising in her cheeks as the reality sank in. She had been so arrogant, so eager to humiliate this woman, that she'd walked straight into the most basic trap in chess. "You?" Lydia tried to form words but they wouldn't come. Ayanna stood up gracefully. Thank you for the game, Miss Frost. And for your generous offer. My offer. Lydia's voice came out as a croak. The investment property you promised if I won. Ayanna's voice remained calm, but there was steel underneath. You made the offer in front of all these witnesses. The crowd pressed closer, phone still recording. Lydia realized with growing horror that this moment was already spreading across social media. Billionaire gets destroyed by janitor in chess. CEO humiliated by working mom. The headlines were writing themselves. Yes, of course, Lydia managed, her business instincts finally kicking in. Backing out now would make the story even worse. A promise is a promise. She pulled out her phone with shaking hands, calling her assistant. Patricia? Yes, I need you to prepare a property deed transfer. The Riverside Avenue complex. Yes, tonight. Ayanna's composure finally cracked slightly. Miss Frost, that's very generous, but I was just... No. Lydia's voice came out sharper than intended. You won fair and square. The property is yours. As her assistant confirmed the arrangements, Lydia caught sight of herself in a mirror across the room. Her carefully styled hair was disheveled, her makeup smudged from nervous sweating. She looked nothing like the polished businesswoman who had walked in here 2 hours ago. Ayanna gathered her daughter, who had been watching everything with wide eyes. Mama, what just happened? Little Zoe whispered. Sometimes good things happen to good people, baby, Ayanna replied, then looked back at Lydia. Thank you, Miss Frost. This means more than you know. As they walked away, Lydia heard Zoe ask, Are we rich now, Mama? No, sweetheart, Ayanna replied. But we have something much better. We have an opportunity. Lydia stood alone at the chessboard, her toppled king lying on its side like her shattered pride. The crowd was already dispersing, everyone eager to share the story of the night Lydia Frost got checkmated by a janitor in 2 moves. She picked up the fallen king, feeling its weight in her palm. For the first time in years, Lydia Frost had absolutely no idea what came next. By the time Lydia's limousine pulled up to her penthouse at 2 a.m., the story had already exploded across social media. Her phone buzzed nonstop with notifications. Twitter, Instagram, TikTok, LinkedIn. Everyone wanted to share the video of Chicago's most ruthless real estate mogul getting schooled by a janitor. Her assistant Patricia was waiting in the lobby, looking frazzled. Miss Frost, the legal department has prepared the property transfer documents, but... Just handle it, Lydia snapped, heading straight for the elevator. Make sure everything is legally binding. I don't want anyone saying I backed out of a public promise. In her penthouse, Lydia poured herself a glass of wine and opened her laptop. The video had over 2 million views already. The comments were brutal. Karma is a beautiful thing. Money can't buy class or chess skills. That janitor has more dignity in her pinky finger than this CEO has in her whole body. Did you see how calm she was? What a queen. Lydia slammed the laptop shut and walked to her floor-to-ceiling windows overlooking the city. Somewhere out there, Ayanna Williams was probably tucking her daughter into bed in whatever tiny apartment they called home. Tomorrow she'd wake up owning a $500,000 investment property. The irony wasn't lost on Lydia. She'd given away properties before, as tax deductions, PR moves, or business strategies. But this was different. This felt personal. Meanwhile, across town in a modest 2-bedroom apartment, Ayanna was indeed tucking Zoe into bed. The little girl's mind was racing with questions. Mama, what's an investment property? Ayanna sat on the edge of the bed, smoothing her daughter's hair. It's a building that someone owns to make money from, usually by renting it to other people. And that lady just gave you one? She did. Because you beat her in chess? Because she made a promise and she kept it. Zoe was quiet for a moment. Mama, are you a chess master? Ayanna smiled. No, baby. I just remembered what your grandpa taught me. He always said chess isn't about being the smartest person in the room. It's about paying attention and thinking before you move. Is that why you moved so slowly? I was thinking about what she was trying to do. Sometimes when people are trying to show off, they forget to protect themselves. After Zoe fell asleep, Ayanna sat at her small kitchen table with the property documents Patricia had messengered over. The Riverside Avenue complex was a small apartment building in a transitioning neighborhood. According to the paperwork, it was worth $480,000. Ayanna had grown up in buildings like this one. She knew exactly what it could become. She opened her laptop, a refurbished model she'd bought with her tax refund, and began researching. Zoning laws, renovation permits, non-profit organizations. By dawn, she had the skeleton of a plan that would either change everything or fail spectacularly. Lydia woke up at 5 a.m. earlier than usual. She'd barely slept, her mind replaying the chess game over and over. She'd been so focused on her aggressive opening that she'd never considered Ayanna might have a strategy of her own. Her morning routine usually included checking overnight market reports, but today she found herself Googling Ayanna Williams Chicago. The search turned up very little: a LinkedIn profile showing she worked for the gala's cleaning company, a Facebook page with privacy settings that revealed nothing. But there was one thing that caught her attention. 3 years ago, Ayanna had been featured in a small community newspaper article about single mothers pursuing education. The piece mentioned she was taking night classes in business administration while working multiple jobs to support her daughter. The woman who'd outplayed her wasn't just lucky. She was smart, educated, and apparently very good at keeping her advantages hidden. Lydia's phone rang. Patricia, as always, started talking before Lydia could say hello. The property transfer is complete. The building is now officially owned by Ayanna Williams. Legal says everything is ironclad. Also, you have 17 interview requests about last night, including Good Morning America. Cancel all of them. Ma'am? I said cancel them. I'm not talking to anyone about this. Lydia spent the rest of the morning in her home office, trying to focus on work. But every few minutes she found herself thinking about Ayanna's daughter. Zoe had been so quiet, so well behaved. How many 8-year-olds could sit through an adult event like that without causing a scene? Around noon, curiosity got the better of her. She called Patricia. I want you to drive by the Riverside Avenue property. Just see what's happening there. Any particular reason? Just curiosity. But Patricia knew Lydia too well. Should I expect you to be unusually interested in this property going forward? Lydia paused. Maybe. That afternoon, Patricia's report was surprising. Ayanna had visited the property with a small team: a contractor, someone who looked like an attorney, and a woman taking extensive notes. They'd spent 2 hours walking through the building and talking to current tenants. She's not flipping it, Patricia observed. Whatever she's planning, it's bigger than a quick sale. Lydia found herself impressed despite her lingering embarrassment. Most people who suddenly acquired a valuable property would either sell it immediately or try to maximize rental income. Ayanna was doing neither. That evening, Lydia did something she hadn't done in years. She drove herself to the Riverside Avenue property and parked across the street. The building was older but well-maintained, with a small playground in the courtyard that had seen better days. She watched Ayanna arrive with Zoe, both carrying grocery bags. They stopped to talk to an elderly tenant watering plants on his balcony. Zoe ran to the playground while her mother sat on a bench with a notebook, sketching something. From her car, Lydia could see Ayanna's profile: focused, determined, completely absorbed in whatever she was planning. This wasn't the behavior of someone who'd gotten lucky. This was someone with a vision. As Lydia drove home, she realized something unsettling. For the first time in years, she was genuinely curious about another person's plans. Not because she wanted to compete or acquire or control, but because she wanted to understand. Ayanna Williams had checkmated her in more ways than one. 2 weeks after the chess game, Lydia couldn't stop herself from driving past the Riverside Avenue property. What she saw made her pull over in shock. The small apartment building was bustling with activity. Construction workers were renovating the ground floor, installing large windows and bright lighting. A sign in the window read, "Future home of Little Champions Child Care Center, opening soon." Lydia sat in her car, stunned. Ayanna wasn't flipping the property or maximizing rental income. She was turning it into a child care center. Her phone buzzed with a text from Patricia. "You need to see the morning news. Channel 7. Lydia pulled up the news app on her phone. The headline made her gasp: "From chess victory to community champion. Janitor transforms gifted property into free child care center." The reporter was interviewing Ayanna outside the construction site. Even on the small phone screen, her quiet dignity was evident. "Ms. Williams, many people would have sold this property for profit. What made you decide to create a child care center?" Ayanna's response was thoughtful. "I work 3 jobs to support my daughter, and I know how hard it is to find affordable, quality child care. This neighborhood has lots of working mothers who face the same struggle. Instead of adding to the problem by creating more expensive housing, I wanted to be part of the solution." "And you're making this completely free? For families who need it?" "Yes. I've applied for grants and nonprofit status. My goal is to serve single mothers, families below the poverty line, and anyone who's working hard but can't afford the $200 a week daycare fees that most centers charge. The reporter pressed on. This is quite an ambitious project for someone who was working as a janitor 2 weeks ago. Ayana's smile was patient but firm. I've been studying business administration for 3 years while working multiple jobs. I've volunteered at community centers, taught chess to kids at the library, and helped run a food bank. The only difference now is that I have the space to make my plans reality. Lydia felt a strange mix of emotions: respect, embarrassment, and something she couldn't quite name. Ayana had taken her sarcastic question about opening a cleaning company and turned it into something beautiful. The construction noise drew neighbors out of their apartments. Lydia watched elderly residents chatting with workers, mothers with young children peering through the windows at the renovations. There was an energy around the building that she'd never seen in any of her developments. Her phone rang. Patricia again. Did you see the news story? I'm watching it now. There's more. 3 local businesses have already donated supplies. The community center is providing volunteers. And Patricia paused dramatically. Your name is being mentioned everywhere as the woman who made it possible. Lydia's stomach dropped. What do they mean? They're calling you the accidental angel. The story is that your chess challenge gave Ayana the opportunity to serve her community. Social media is split between people praising your generosity and people saying you got what you deserved. I didn't do anything generous. I lost a bet. That's not how the public sees it. Whether you meant to or not, you're now connected to this story. After hanging up, Lydia realized she had a choice. She could distance herself from the project, ignore the media attention, and wait for the story to fade. Or she could lean into it. The smart business move would be to walk away. But something about Ayana's quiet determination made that impossible. That afternoon, Lydia called her PR team. I want to make a public statement supporting the Little Champions Child Care Center. Her publicist, Richard, sounded skeptical. Are you sure? This could backfire if the project fails. You'd be associated with the failure. It won't fail. How can you be so confident? Lydia thought about Ayana's 2-move checkmate, her careful planning, her 3 years of night school while working multiple jobs. Because the person running it doesn't know how to lose. The next morning, Lydia's statement appeared in the Chicago Tribune. While my chess skills clearly need work, my respect for Ayana Williams grows every day. Her vision for the Little Champions Child Care Center represents the kind of community investment that creates lasting change. I'm proud to support her efforts and encourage other local businesses to do the same. Along with the statement, Lydia announced a $50,000 donation for construction and equipment costs. The impact was immediate. Her phone didn't stop ringing. Reporters, business associates, friends who couldn't believe she was publicly supporting a project run by the woman who embarrassed her. But the call that mattered came that evening. Ayana's voice was warm but slightly hesitant. Miss Frost? This is Ayana Williams. I wanted to thank you for your statement and your donation. You don't need to thank me. You earned that property fair and square. That's not what I meant. Ayana paused. Most people in your position would have tried to distance themselves from what happened. Instead, you're helping me succeed. That means more than you know. Lydia found herself smiling for the first time in days. When do you expect to open? If everything goes according to plan, 6 weeks. We're installing a playground in the courtyard, setting up classrooms, and creating a small library. Zoe is so excited she can barely sleep. Would you? Lydia hesitated, then pushed forward. Would you mind if I visited the construction site sometime? I'd like to see what you're building. Of course. Actually, why don't you come by this Saturday? I'll be there with Zoe and we can show you around. After hanging up, Lydia realized she was looking forward to Saturday more than she'd looked forward to anything in months. For the first time since the chess game, she felt like she was on the right side of the story. Outside her penthouse windows, the city sparkled in the evening light. Somewhere out there, Ayana was probably helping Zoe with homework while reviewing construction schedules and grant applications. The woman who'd checkmated her in 2 moves was about to checkmate poverty and childcare inequality in her neighborhood. And somehow, Lydia was becoming part of the solution instead of just another wealthy observer. It felt like winning even though she'd lost. Saturday morning arrived with Chicago's typical spring unpredictability, sunny and 60 degrees, perfect for construction work. Lydia stood in front of her walk-in closet, staring at rows of designer suits and wondering what one wore to visit a construction site. She settled on dark jeans, the most expensive jeans she owned but still jeans, and a cashmere sweater. Her driver offered to take her, but something made her choose to drive herself. This felt like the kind of visit that required arriving under her own power. The Riverside Avenue property looked completely different in daylight. What had seemed like a standard renovation project from her car was actually a thoughtful transformation. New playground equipment was being installed in the courtyard. The ground floor windows had been expanded to let in natural light. Everything was painted in cheerful, welcoming colors. Ayanna emerged from the building wearing work clothes and a tool belt, looking completely at home directing contractors. When she spotted Lydia, her face broke into a genuine smile. "Miss Frost. Perfect timing. We just finished the main classroom. Please call me Lydia." Ayanna nodded. "Lydia it is. Come on, let me show you what your donation helped create." Inside, the transformation was remarkable. What had been a standard apartment unit was now a bright, spacious room with child-sized furniture, educational posters, and reading corners. The attention to detail was impressive. Electrical outlets covered with safety plugs, rounded corners on all furniture, windows at child height so kids could see outside. "This is beautiful," Lydia said, and meant it. "How did you know how to plan all this?" 3 years of night school, plus I've been volunteering at community centers since Zoe was little. I've seen what works and what doesn't. Ayanna ran her hand along a bookshelf. "Also, I remember being a kid who needed a safe place to go after school." A small voice called from the courtyard. "Mama. The swing set is finished." Zoe ran in, covered in dirt and beaming. When she saw Lydia, she stopped short, suddenly shy. "Hi, Miss Frost. Mama told me you helped buy our playground equipment." "Hi, Zoe. How do you like it?" "It's perfect. Want to see?" The next hour passed quickly as Zoe gave Lydia a complete tour. The art room with washable walls, the nap area with soft rugs, the kitchen where healthy snacks would be prepared. Every detail had been planned with working mothers in mind. "We'll be open from 6 a.m. to 7 p.m., Ayanna explained. "A lot of service industry jobs start early or end late. Traditional daycares don't accommodate those schedules." "How many children can you serve?" 30 kids, ages 2 to 10. "We'll provide breakfast, lunch, after-school programming, and homework help. All free for families who qualify." Lydia did quick math in her head. The operating costs alone must be substantial. About $180,000 a year. "I've secured grants for the first 2 years, and I'm working on fundraising for sustainability." They sat on the new playground benches while Zoe tested every piece of equipment. Other neighborhood children had begun to gather, drawn by the activity. "Lydia," Ayanna said carefully, "can I ask you something?" "Of course. Why are you really here?" "I mean, I appreciate your support, but most people in your position would have written a check and moved on." Lydia watched Zoe showing a younger child how to use the monkey bars safely. "Honestly, I'm not sure. Maybe because I've spent so many years writing checks to charities without ever seeing what they actually do with the money. This is different." "Different how?" "It's real. It's personal. And..." Lydia paused, choosing her words carefully. "You didn't just take advantage of an opportunity. You created something meaningful." A comfortable silence fell between them. Then Ayanna spoke quietly. "You know, that night at the gala? I almost didn't say anything about the chess mistake." "Why did you?" "Because I hate seeing people make mistakes when they don't have to. My father always said that knowledge should be shared, not hoarded." "Your father taught you chess?" Ayanna's face softened. "Every Sunday after church. He was a maintenance worker at a hospital, but he'd been chess champion of his high school. He said chess taught him that every move has consequences, and you have to think 3 steps ahead in life, not just in games." "Sounds like a wise man." "He was. He died when Zoe was 2, but I still hear his voice every time I make an important decision." Ayanna looked at the construction work around them. "He would have loved this." The next Monday, Lydia arrived at her office to find her PR team in crisis mode. Richard was pacing by the conference table, surrounded by newspaper clippings and tablet screens. "We have a problem," he announced. "The story is getting bigger, not smaller." Lydia poured herself coffee and sat down. "Explain." 3 more local news stations want interviews. The Chicago Tribune wants to do a feature story. And..." Richard paused dramatically. "Good Morning America wants to book both you and Ayanna for a segment about unconventional philanthropy. That sounds like good publicity. It would be, if we could control the narrative. But we can't. Ayanna Williams is becoming a media darling, and you're being cast as either the generous benefactor or the humbled billionaire, depending on who's telling the story." Lydia's assistant Patricia spoke up from the corner. "There's also this." She held up her phone showing a social media post. Someone posted security footage from the gala. You can see the whole chess game, including your reaction when you lost. Lydia winced. She remembered that moment vividly, the shock, the embarrassment, the desperate scramble to maintain dignity. How bad is it? It's gone viral. 2 million views and climbing. The comments are mixed. Richard pulled up the video on the conference room screen. Watching herself lose with such visible shock was mortifying, but something else caught her attention. In the background of the video she could see little Zoe watching the entire exchange with intelligent, thoughtful eyes. "What's our recommendation?" Lydia asked. "Distance yourself from the project," Richard said immediately. "Make a final donation and move on. Let Ayanna Williams have her success story without dragging your reputation through more public scrutiny." Patricia disagreed. "I think you should lean into it. The project is going to succeed with or without you, and being associated with success is better than being remembered as the billionaire who got schooled by a janitor." Lydia looked at the video again, focusing on Ayanna's calm dignity as she accepted the property deed. There was something powerful about that moment, not just the chess victory, but the grace with which she'd handled an unexpected opportunity. Set up the Good Morning America interview, Lydia decided. "Both of us together?" Richard looked horrified. "Are you sure? You'll be giving her equal billing with you." "Good. It's her story. I'm just the person who was smart enough to honor a bet." As her team reluctantly began planning media strategy, Lydia found herself thinking about Ayanna's father. Every move has consequences and you have to think 3 steps ahead. Maybe losing that chess game was the best move she'd ever made. The Little Champions Childcare Center opened on a Tuesday morning in May with no fanfare, no ribbon cutting, and no media coverage. Ayanna had specifically requested that the first day be private, just for the families who would be using the center. Lydia learned about the opening from Patricia, who had been quietly monitoring the project's progress. Against every instinct that told her to respect Ayanna's privacy, Lydia found herself driving past the building that morning. What she saw made her park across the street and watch. 7 children between the ages of 3 and 9 were arriving with their parents, mostly mothers heading to work at hospitals, restaurants, and retail stores. The drop-off process was smooth and organized. Each child had a cubby for their belongings, a healthy breakfast waiting, and Ayanna greeting them personally at the door. Zoe, now 8 years old and clearly in her element, was helping younger children find their assigned seats and showing them where the bathrooms were located. She moved with quiet confidence, obviously having inherited her mother's natural leadership abilities. Lydia watched a young mother, probably not much older than 20, hug her toddler goodbye with tears in her eyes. Ayanna approached them gently, kneeling down to the child's level. "Mama has to go to work now, but she'll be back this afternoon," Ayanna said softly. "Miss Jennifer is going to take really good care of you, and we have lots of fun things planned." The transition was handled with such care and expertise that the child's tears dried quickly. As the mother left, Lydia could see her relief and gratitude. This wasn't just childcare. This was community support at its most basic and essential level. Her phone buzzed with a text from an unfamiliar number. "Would you like to come in for a quick tour? I saw your car across the street." "Ayanna." Lydia looked up at the building, embarrassed at being caught. Through the large windows she could see Ayanna waving from inside. There was no hiding now. She crossed the street and entered through the bright blue front door. The space was even more impressive up close, warm, welcoming, and buzzing with purposeful activity. "I'm sorry for lurking," Lydia said immediately. "I was just curious about opening day." "No need to apologize. I'm glad you're here." Ayanna gestured around the main room. "Want to see what your donation helped create?" The tour was eye-opening. Every corner of the center had been designed with intention. The art area had washable surfaces and child-safe supplies. The library corner featured books in English and Spanish, reflecting the neighborhood's diversity. The playground outside was visible from every window, allowing constant supervision. "Ms. Lydia." Zoe appeared at her elbow, paint smudges on her cheek. "Look what I made." She held up a watercolor painting of 2 women sitting at a chessboard, surrounded by children playing. "That's beautiful, Zoe. Is that you and your mama?" "It's mama and you. See, you're both smiling because the children are happy." Lydia studied the painting more closely. In Zoe's artistic interpretation, both women looked peaceful and content, working together rather than competing. "Can I keep this?" Lydia asked. Zoe nodded enthusiastically. "Mama says you helped make this place possible." As the morning progressed, Lydia found herself staying longer than planned. She helped serve breakfast, read stories to a group of 4-year-olds, and watched Ayana manage 15 different tasks with calm efficiency. "How are you handling all this?" Lydia asked during a quiet moment. "Honestly, I'm terrified I'll mess something up," Ayana admitted. "This is the biggest thing I've ever attempted. But every time I see these kids learning and playing safely while their parents work, I remember why it matters." "You're not going to mess it up. How can you be so sure?" Lydia gestured toward the room full of children. "Because you understand what you're building. Most people see childcare as babysitting. You see it as community development." Around lunchtime, Lydia's phone started buzzing with meeting reminders. She reluctantly prepared to leave. "Thank you for letting me visit," she told Ayana. "Thank you for caring enough to come. And Lydia? You're welcome here anytime." "Really?" As Lydia drove back to her office, she found herself thinking about the contrast between her morning at the center and her usual routine. Her typical day involved reviewing acquisition reports, negotiating deals, and making decisions that affected millions of dollars but rarely touched actual lives. This morning she'd seen immediate, tangible impact. Children learning, mothers able to work without worry, a community coming together around shared values. At her office, Patricia was waiting with a stack of messages. "How was your visit?" "Educational," Lydia replied, hanging Zoe's painting on her office wall where she'd see it every day. "Speaking of education, we have 3 interview requests about your involvement with the childcare center. How should I respond?" Lydia looked at the painting, 2 women working together, surrounded by happy children. "Tell them I'm not the story. Ayana Williams is the story. If they want to interview me, they need to interview her first." "That's an unusual approach. Maybe it's time I tried some unusual approaches." That evening, Lydia did something she hadn't done in years. Instead of working late, she left the office at 5 p.m. and drove to her penthouse. But instead of settling in with acquisition reports, she found herself researching childhood development, early education best practices, and the long-term economic impact of quality childcare. The statistics were sobering. Children in quality early education programs were more likely to graduate high school, attend college, and earn higher incomes as adults. Working mothers with reliable childcare were able to advance in their careers and provide better stability for their families. Ayana wasn't just running a daycare. She was changing the trajectory of dozens of families. Lydia made a note to herself: call Ayana tomorrow about expanding the program. For the first time in months, she fell asleep thinking about something other than profit margins and market analysis. She dreamed about children's laughter and a quiet woman who taught her that the most powerful moves sometimes looked like the simplest ones. 3 weeks after the center opened, packages began arriving. Large boxes from educational supply companies, crates of art materials, new computers still in their packaging. All addressed to the Little Champions Childcare Center, all marked, anonymous donation. Ayana knew exactly who was sending them. The gifts were too expensive and too perfectly chosen to be random charity. Someone was paying attention to what the center needed and responding immediately. When the children mentioned wanting more books, a library's worth of new titles appeared. When the playground needed shade, a professional-grade canopy system was delivered and installed. "Mama, who keeps sending us all this stuff?" Zoe asked one afternoon, helping unpack a box of musical instruments. "Someone who cares about what we're doing here," Ayana replied diplomatically. But Zoe was too smart for vague answers. "Is it Ms. Lydia?" Ayana paused in her unpacking. "What makes you think that?" "Because these are the same brands I saw in her office building when we went for the interview. And because she keeps driving by really slowly." Ayana had noticed the slow drive-bys too. Lydia's distinctive black sedan appeared on Riverside Avenue at least twice a week, always during pickup or drop-off times when the center was most active. That Friday, Ayana made a decision. When she spotted the familiar car parked across the street, she walked over and tapped on the passenger window. Lydia looked genuinely embarrassed as she rolled down the window. Would you like to come in for coffee? We just put the kids down for quiet time." Inside the center, they sat in the small kitchen area Ayana had created for staff. The coffee was simple but good, and the atmosphere was peaceful with the children resting. "The packages," Ayana said without preamble. "They're from you, aren't they?" Lydia shifted uncomfortably. "I don't know what you mean." "Lydia." Ayana's voice was gentle but firm. "A $3,000 playground canopy doesn't just appear from anonymous donors. Neither do 20 brand new tablets or a professional sound system for the music room." Lydia sighed. "How did you know it was me?" "Because everything that arrives is exactly what we need, exactly when we need it." Someone would have to be paying very close attention to know we needed sun protection for the playground or that our old computer was too slow for the educational software. Are you upset? I'm grateful. But I'm also curious why you're being so secretive about it. Lydia stared into her coffee. Because I didn't want you to feel obligated to thank me or pretend we're friends because I'm writing checks. And what if I wanted to be friends regardless of the checks? The question caught Lydia off guard. She looked up to find Ayana watching her with those same thoughtful eyes that had studied the chessboard so carefully. People don't usually want to be friends with me for me, Lydia said quietly. They want access to my money, my connections, my influence. I learned a long time ago that it's easier to keep relationships transactional. That sounds lonely. It is. But it's also safe. Ayana refilled their coffee cups, taking her time with the simple task. Can I tell you something? That night at the gala when you challenged me to chess, I knew exactly what you were trying to do. You did. You wanted to humiliate me in front of all those wealthy people. Make yourself feel superior by showing how much smarter and more sophisticated you were than the janitor. Lydia felt heat rise in her cheeks. I'm sorry. That was. Let me finish, Ayana said kindly. I knew what you were trying to do and I decided to let you try. Because sometimes people need to learn lessons, and sometimes the universe provides opportunities for teaching. So you planned the whole thing? I planned to win if I could. The two-move checkmate was just luck. You happened to make exactly the moves that allowed it. But yes, I was hoping to surprise you. Why? Because I saw something in your eyes that looked like my daughter when she's bored and acting out. You weren't really cruel, Lydia. You were just empty. Going through motions at an event you didn't want to be at, around people you didn't really care about. The observation was so accurate it made Lydia's chest tight. And you thought beating me at chess would help? I thought maybe if someone surprised you, really surprised you, it might wake something up. They sat in comfortable silence, the sounds of children's quiet activities floating from the main room. Finally Lydia spoke. It did wake something up. I just don't know what to do with it. Well, Ayana said with a smile, you could start by helping us plan the second location. Second location? We already have a waiting list of 40 families. The demand is enormous. I've been looking at properties, but I could use someone with real estate expertise to help evaluate them. Lydia felt a familiar excitement, the thrill of a new project, a challenge to solve. But this time it wasn't about profit or competition. It was about expanding something good. I'd like that, she said. I'd like that a lot. From the main room came the sound of children waking up from quiet time, their voices mixing in happy chatter. Zoe appeared in the doorway, hair tousled from resting. Mama, can Ms. Lydia stay for snack time? We're having fruit and crackers. Lydia looked at her watch. She had a board meeting in an hour and 3 calls scheduled after that. Her old self would have politely declined and rushed back to work. I'd love to stay for snack time, she heard herself say. As Zoe beamed and ran back to tell the other children, Ayana smiled. You're learning. Learning what? That the best investments don't always show up on quarterly reports. Lydia spent the next hour helping serve apple slices and listening to 6-year-olds explain their artwork. She missed her board meeting, rescheduled her calls, and drove home that evening with finger paint under her manicured nails. It was the best day she'd had in years. By summer, Lydia's weekly visits to Little Champions had become routine. She arrived every Thursday at 4 p.m., staying through dinner and helping with after-school activities. The children had stopped being shy around her, and several had taken to calling her Ms. Lydia, with the easy affection of youth. Ayana watched this transformation with quiet amazement. The woman who had once dismissed her as the help was now sitting cross-legged on the floor, helping 9-year-old Malik with long division homework. I still don't get why we need to borrow from the tens place, Malik was saying, frustration clear in his voice. Think of it like this, Lydia explained patiently. You know how sometimes you need to borrow money from your mom to buy something you really want? Yeah. Well, numbers can borrow from each other too. The number 7 in the ones place needs help, so it borrows 10 from the tens place. Now it has 17, which is enough to subtract 9. Malik's face lit up with understanding. Oh. So now I have 17 minus 9, which is 8. Exactly. You've got it. Ayana shook her head in wonder. 3 months ago, Lydia had been mocking her in front of Chicago's elite. Now she was patiently tutoring children in math concepts, and she was genuinely good at it. Ms. Lydia, called 6-year-old Destiny from the art table. Can you help me with my family portrait? Lydia moved to the art area, where Destiny had been working on a drawing of stick figures. "This is my mama," Destiny explained, pointing to a figure with long hair. "And this is my baby brother. And this is you." "Me? You come here every week, so you're part of our family now." The simple statement hit Lydia harder than any business deal she'd ever closed. She was part of their family now. When had that happened? Later, as they cleaned up after the children went home, Ayana brought up the second location. "I found a property that might work," she said, showing Lydia photos on her phone. "It's in Bronzeville, about 20 minutes south. The building needs work, but the price is reasonable." Lydia studied the photos. The property was larger than their current location, with potential for serving more families. "What's the asking price?" $320,000. "I've saved about $40,000 from my salary here, and I think I can get a small business loan for the rest." "Ayana, you don't need a loan." "Yes, I do. I want to do this independently." "But if I co-signed or provided collateral?" "No." Ayana's voice was firm but not unkind. "I appreciate everything you've done, but I need to build this myself. Otherwise, it's not really mine." Lydia felt a familiar frustration, the same feeling she got when business partners made decisions based on pride rather than pragmatism. But looking at Ayana's determined expression, she recognized something else, the same quiet strength that had won a chess game in 2 moves. "Okay," Lydia said. "But let me at least help you evaluate the property. No money, just professional advice." Ayana smiled. "That I'll accept." The following Saturday they met at the Bronzeville property with Zoe in tow. The building was solid but dated, with good bones and plenty of potential. As they walked through the empty rooms, Lydia found herself getting excited about the possibilities. "This room could be perfect for infant care," she said, noting the natural light and easy access to plumbing. "And if you knocked out this wall, you'd have space for a real gymnasium." "I was thinking the same thing," Ayana agreed. "The neighborhood has lots of families with school-age kids who need safe after-school activities." Zoe ran through the empty rooms, her footsteps echoing as she called out suggestions. "This could be the reading room. And this could be where we do science experiments." As they explored, Lydia noticed things Ayana might have missed. Electrical systems that would need updating, zoning restrictions that could affect expansion plans, potential structural issues that weren't immediately obvious. Her years of real estate experience were useful in ways that had nothing to do with profit margins. "The foundation is solid," she reported after examining the basement. "But you'll need about $80,000 in renovations to bring everything up to code for a childcare facility." Ayana's face fell slightly. "That's more than I hoped." "It's still a good investment. Once renovated, this building could serve 60 families. The long-term impact would be incredible." They sat on the front steps while Zoe played in the small yard, imagining playground equipment and gardens. "Tell me about your business plan," Lydia said. "What do you mean? How do you plan to make this sustainable? One location is manageable, but 2 centers require different systems: hiring, training, quality control, financial management." Ayana pulled out a notebook filled with detailed plans. "I've been thinking about that. Each center needs a lead teacher and an assistant director. I want to hire from the community when possible, mothers who understand the families we serve." "And funding?" "Grants for startup costs, sliding scale fees for families who can pay something, and fundraising events. I'm also applying for city contracts to provide after-school programming." Lydia was impressed by the thoroughness of the planning. Ayana had thought through challenges that many experienced business owners overlooked. "What about expansion beyond 2 locations?" "That's my 5-year dream. Centers in 5 neighborhoods, maybe a mobile program for areas that can't support a permanent location." Ayana's eyes lit up as she described her vision. "Every working mother in Chicago should have access to quality, affordable childcare." "That's a $40 million vision." "I know. Probably impossible." "Not impossible," Lydia said thoughtfully. "Just big." As they drove home separately, Lydia found herself thinking about Ayana's 5-year plan. $40 million was significant but not insurmountable, especially if approached strategically. The real challenge would be maintaining quality and community focus during rapid expansion. That evening, Lydia did something unprecedented. She canceled her weekend plans and spent both Saturday and Sunday researching nonprofit management, childcare licensing requirements, and successful models for scaling community-based services. By Monday morning, she had the outline of a plan that could make Ayana's 5-year dream a reality. The question was how to present it without making Ayana feel like she was being taken over. Some chess games Lydia was learning took much longer than 2 moves to win. Lydia spent 2 weeks perfecting her presentation. She researched successful childcare nonprofits, analyzed funding models, and created financial projections that would make Ayana's vision sustainable. When she finally called to request a meeting, her hands were actually shaking. "I have an idea I'd like to run by you," she told Ayana over the phone. "Something that could help with your expansion plans." They met at a coffee shop near the center on a quiet Sunday morning. Ayana arrived with Zoe, who immediately settled at a nearby table with coloring books and juice. "So what's this idea?" Ayana asked, settling into her chair with coffee. Lydia opened her laptop and turned it toward Ayana. "I think I know how to make your 5-year plan work." The presentation was thorough and professional. Lydia had created a detailed proposal for the Little Champions Foundation, a nonprofit organization that could support multiple child care centers across Chicago. The funding model combined grants, corporate partnerships, and a unique sliding fee structure that would make the centers accessible to all families while remaining financially sustainable. The initial investment would be $12 million, Lydia explained. That would fund 5 locations, including renovations, equipment, and 2 years of operating expenses while we build sustainable revenue streams. Ayana studied the projections, her expression unreadable. "This is incredibly detailed. I want to be your founding partner. Equal control, shared decision-making, long-term commitment to the mission." Lydia leaned forward. "I'd provide the initial funding, you'd provide the expertise and vision. Together, we could serve over 300 families within 3 years. Equal partners?" "Completely equal. 50-50 ownership, shared voting rights on all major decisions. Your name on the building, your vision driving the programs." Ayana closed the laptop and leaned back in her chair. For a long moment she didn't speak. "No," she said finally. Lydia felt like she'd been slapped. "No. I can't accept this." "But why?" "The numbers work, the model is sustainable, and because it's not what I want." Ayana's voice was calm but firm. "I appreciate the research and the financial modeling, but this isn't my vision anymore. It's yours." "That's not true. Everything is based on your original plans. Your version serves 300 families in 3 years. My version serves families in ways that can't be measured in spreadsheets." Ayana gestured toward the center visible through the coffee shop window. "Do you see what's happening over there right now?" Lydia looked. Through the center's windows, she could see several mothers sitting in the family lounge, talking and laughing while their children played nearby. It was Sunday, the center was officially closed, but the space was being used as an informal community gathering place. "Those women work different shifts so they rarely see each other during the week," Ayana continued. "But they've started meeting here on Sundays to share resources, support each other, let their kids play together. That's the real impact. Community building. Relationship forming. People helping people. But we could replicate that at multiple locations. Could we? Or would we get so focused on scaling and systems and efficiency that we'd lose sight of what makes this special?" Lydia stared at her presentation, seeing it now through Ayana's eyes. Every chart and graph reduced human connections to numbers. Every projection treated children and families like units to be processed efficiently. "I messed this up, didn't I?" "You didn't mess anything up. You did what you know how to do, you created a business plan. But what I'm building isn't really a business. It's something else." "What is it then?" Ayana smiled. "It's home. For kids who need a safe place, for mothers who need support, for a community that needs connection. You can't scale that the way you scale a business." Lydia felt embarrassment burning in her chest. Once again she'd missed the point entirely. "I'm sorry," she said. "I thought I was being helpful." "You were being helpful. This presentation shows how much you care about making the vision work." "But Lydia, you're trying to solve a relationship problem with a business solution." "What do you mean?" "You want to be part of something meaningful, but you keep trying to buy your way in. The packages, the donations, the partnership proposal, you're treating friendship like a business transaction." The observation hit home because it was true. Lydia had spent so many years using money to solve problems that she'd forgotten how to build relationships without it. "How do I do it differently?" "You could start by just showing up. Not to write checks or solve problems, but because you want to be here." Lydia looked over at Zoe, who was drawing a picture of 3 stick figures holding hands. "Can I ask you something? Why did you give me a chance at all? After the way I treated you that night, you could have just taken the property and never spoken to me again. Because I saw something in you that reminded me of myself before I had Zoe." "What do you mean?" "You were successful, accomplished, probably very good at your job. But you looked like you'd forgotten why any of it mattered. Having a child taught me that success without purpose is just expensive emptiness." Ayana paused, choosing her words carefully. I thought maybe you needed to remember your purpose. And maybe I could help with that. By beating me at chess? By showing you what happens when someone gets a real opportunity to make a difference. Lydia closed her laptop. So what now? Do you want me to back off? Stop visiting? No. I want you to keep coming around, but as a friend, not a benefactor. Help Zoe with homework because you enjoy spending time with her. Read stories to the kids because their laughter makes you happy. Support the center because you believe in what we're doing, not because you're trying to buy absolution for a chess game. And the second location? I'll figure it out. Maybe not as fast as your $12 million plan, but in a way that feels right. As they prepared to leave, Zoe ran over with her finished drawing. Look. It's me, Mama, and Ms. Lydia having a picnic. In the drawing, all three figures were smiling, sitting on a blanket under a tree. It was simple and sweet and completely free of business plans or financial projections. That's beautiful, sweetheart, Lydia said. Can I keep this one too? Of course. But you have to promise to remember what it feels like. What it feels like. Being happy with just regular people. On the drive home, Lydia realized that Zoe, at 8 years old, had just given her the best business advice she'd ever received. Success wasn't about the scale of your impact. It was about the authenticity of your connections. She had a lot to learn about being just a regular person. Fortunately, she had excellent teachers. The summer heat was brutal, but inside Little Champions, the air conditioning hummed quietly while children napped after lunch. Lydia sat in the reading corner with 3-year-old Jaden, who had been having trouble settling down for quiet time. One more story, Ms. Lydia? He asked, holding up a picture book about trains. Just one more, she agreed, settling him more comfortably in her lap. This had become her new normal. Thursday afternoons turned into Friday mornings, then weekend visits, just to help with projects. Her executive assistant had stopped even pretending to understand Lydia's schedule. All aboard the midnight train, she read, making train whistle sounds that made Jaden giggle. Choo-choo. From across the room, Ayana watched with quiet satisfaction. The transformation had been gradual but complete. The woman who once couldn't spare 5 minutes for small talk now spent hours on the floor with children, completely absorbed in their world. Is that the same person who challenged me to chess 6 months ago? Ayana asked Zoe, who was organizing books nearby. Mama, Ms. Lydia is different now. She smiles more and she knows all our names and she brings her good snacks to share instead of keeping them in her fancy car. It was true. Lydia had started bringing homemade cookies. Actual homemade cookies that she'd learned to bake specifically for the children. She'd traded her designer handbags for a canvas tote filled with coloring supplies and educational games. The changes went deeper than anyone realized. Last week, Lydia had turned down a $20 million acquisition deal because the meeting would have conflicted with the center's science fair. Her business partners were starting to whisper about her shifting priorities. That evening, as they cleaned up after the children went home, Ayana brought up something that had been on her mind. Lydia, can I ask you something personal? Of course. What was your life like before? I mean really like not the public version. Lydia paused in her cleaning, considering the question. Busy. Successful. Very, very lonely. No family? My parents died in a car accident when I was 22. No siblings, no children, no close friends. Just work, charity events, and business associates who wanted something from me. That sounds hard. I thought it was normal. I built my company, made my money, proved I could compete with anyone. But winning all the time gets exhausting when there's no one to celebrate with. Ayana sat down at one of the child-sized tables. Is that why you were so competitive that night? Always trying to prove you were better than everyone else? Probably. I'd gotten into the habit of treating every interaction like a contest I had to win. Lydia joined her at the tiny table, their knees bumping in the cramped space. Losing to you was the first time in years that I learned something new about myself. What did you learn? That I'd rather be surprised by someone than superior to them. They worked in comfortable silence for a while, straightening toys and preparing for the next day. Finally, Ayana spoke again. I have news about the second location. Lydia looked up hopefully. The bank approved my loan application. I can move forward with the Bronzeville property. That's wonderful. When do you think you'll open? 6 months if renovations go smoothly. I've already started interviewing potential staff. Lydia felt genuine excitement for Ayana's success, but also a small pang of disappointment. Will you still need help with evaluation and planning? Actually, I was hoping you'd consider something bigger. What do you mean? Ayana pulled out a folder she'd been carrying. I want you to be on the board of directors for the Little Champions Foundation. Lydia opened the folder to find formal incorporation papers and a detailed governance structure. Ayana had been busy. You're creating a real foundation? A nonprofit that can support multiple centers while maintaining local community control. Each location would have its own community advisory board, but they'd all operate under the same mission and values. Lydia studied the organizational chart. It was sophisticated and well-planned, designed to prevent exactly the kind of corporate takeover she'd proposed months earlier. What would my role be? Strategic planning, real estate expertise, and fundraising connections. Also, someone who can keep me grounded when I start thinking too big too fast. And you'd still maintain overall control? As executive director, yes. But all major decisions would require board approval. Shared leadership, not sole ownership. Lydia looked at the governance documents again. They were carefully crafted to ensure community input and prevent any single person from dominating the organization's direction. Why are you asking me to join? Because over the past 6 months, I've watched you care about these children and families in ways that go beyond charity. You're not trying to fix us or save us anymore. You're just here. Present. Invested in the relationships. And you trust me with that level of responsibility? Ayana smiled. You know what convinced me? Last week, when Malik was having trouble with his reading, you spent your lunch break researching different teaching methods. Then you came back with 3 new approaches to try. You didn't throw money at the problem, you threw yourself at it. The memory made Lydia warm. She'd been so focused on helping Malik that she'd completely forgotten about her usual power lunch meetings. What do you say? Ayana asked. Want to help me change the world, one family at a time? Lydia looked around the center, at the artwork covering the walls, the photos of children and families, the comfortable spaces where real life happened every day. 6 months ago this had been just another investment property. Now it felt more like home than her penthouse. Yes, she said. But I have one condition. Ayana raised an eyebrow. Next time you want to teach me something, maybe skip the public chess humiliation? They both laughed, the sound mixing with the distant noise of traffic and children playing in nearby yards. For the first time since her parents died, Lydia felt like she was exactly where she belonged. Deal, Ayana said, extending her hand for a shake. Partners? Partners? Lydia agreed, taking her hand. From the art area, Zoe looked up from her latest drawing. A picture of 2 women building something together, surrounded by smiling children. Mama, is Ms. Lydia going to help us build more centers? She is, baby. Good. We're going to need lots of help if we want to take care of all the kids in Chicago. As they locked up the center that evening, Lydia realized that Zoe was right. They were going to need lots of help. But for the first time in her adult life, she wasn't facing a challenge alone. 2 years later, Lydia stood at the podium of the Palmer House Hotel's Grand Ballroom, looking out at 500 guests gathered for the Little Champions Foundation's annual fundraising gala. The irony wasn't lost on her. This was the same hotel where her chess humiliation had gone viral, launching the most meaningful chapter of her life. 2 years ago, she began, her voice carrying clearly through the microphone, I made what I thought was a throwaway bet with a woman I barely knew. I lost that bet spectacularly, and it was the best thing that ever happened to me. The audience chuckled appreciatively. Many of them had seen the original video. Tonight, I'm proud to announce that the Little Champions Foundation now operates 5 childcare centers across Chicago, serving over 400 families. But more importantly, we've created something that can't be measured in numbers, a community of support, growth, and genuine care. She paused, finding Ayana in the audience. Her friend sat at a front table with Zoe, now 10 years old and beaming with pride in her best dress. None of this would exist without Ayana Williams, whose vision, determination, and wisdom turned a sarcastic chess bet into a movement that's changing lives. Tonight, I'm thrilled to announce our next phase of growth. Lydia had practiced this moment for weeks, but her hands still trembled as she opened the envelope. The Little Champions Foundation has received a $25 million commitment to expand our services to 10 additional neighborhoods over the next 5 years. This funding will allow us to serve over 1,500 families and employ more than 200 community members. The applause was thunderous, but Lydia kept her eyes on Ayana, who looked genuinely shocked. This commitment comes from the Frost Family Foundation, Lydia continued, which I'm establishing tonight with my personal assets. Ayana, I hope you'll forgive me for making this announcement without consulting you first, but I wanted tonight to be special. As the applause died down, Lydia stepped away from the podium. Ayana Williams, would you please join me up here? Ayana made her way to the stage, still looking stunned. When she reached the podium, Lydia handed her the microphone. "I don't know what to say," Ayana began, her voice slightly shaky. "When I sat down at that chessboard 2 years ago, I was a single mother working 3 jobs and dreaming of maybe helping a few families in my neighborhood. Tonight, because of this partnership, we're talking about helping 1,500 families across the city." She looked at Lydia with tears in her eyes. "But the number I'm most proud of isn't 1,500 families or $25 million. It's one lonely billionaire who learned that the best investments can't be measured in money." The audience was completely silent, absorbed in the emotion of the moment. "Lydia Frost taught me that partnerships aren't about what you can give or get, they're about what you can build together. And what we've built together is a family." She gestured toward their table, where Zoe was applauding enthusiastically. "My daughter used to ask me if we were rich after that chess game. Tonight, I can finally answer her question properly. We're not rich in money, we're rich in purpose, in community, in the knowledge that every day we're making a real difference in real lives." Ayana handed the microphone back to Lydia. "Thank you for losing at chess. Thank you for showing up. Thank you for becoming the friend I didn't know I needed." The standing ovation lasted 3 full minutes. But Lydia barely heard it. She was too busy thinking about how far they'd both come from that awkward chess game. Later, at the after-party reception, Lydia found herself in a corner with Zoe, who was carefully balancing a plate of fancy appetizers. "Ms. Lydia, can I ask you something?" "Always. Are you happy now?" The question was so direct, so innocent, that it took Lydia's breath away. "Yes, sweetheart. I'm very happy. Are you?" But I was happy before too because I had Mama. Now I'm extra happy because I have you too." "You have me too," Lydia repeated softly. "I like the sound of that. Mama says you're family now. Not the kind you're born with, but the kind you choose. Your mama is very smart." "I know. She's the smartest person in the world. Well, except at business stuff. You're the smartest at that." Lydia laughed. "We make a good team, don't we? The best team. Like Batman and Robin, except you both help kids and nobody wears weird costumes." Across the room, Ayana was deep in conversation with potential donors, her natural charm and passion for the work drawing people in effortlessly. She caught Lydia's eye and smiled, that same warm smile that had disarmed her completely 2 years ago. "Zoe," Lydia said impulsively, "how would you feel if I asked your mama to be my family too? Officially, I mean. Like adoption? Sort of. Like partnership. Permanent partnership. In everything." Zoe's eyes went wide. "You mean like getting married?" "Well." Lydia felt her cheeks warm. The idea had been forming slowly over months of shared dinners, late-night planning sessions, and quiet moments watching Ayana work with the children. "Would that be okay with you?" "Are you kidding? That would be the best thing ever. Then we could all live together and you could help me with math homework every day and Mama wouldn't have to worry about money for the centers anymore." "Money shouldn't be the reason people get married, Zoe." "I know that. But love should be. And you love Mama, right? And she loves you?" Out of the mouths of babes. "How do you know that?" "Because you look at each other the same way people do in movies when they're about to kiss. Except you're both too scared to say anything." Lydia laughed despite her nervousness. "You think we're scared? Mama's scared you'll think she's just trying to get your money. And you're scared she doesn't really like you, just what you can do for the centers." The 10-year-old's insight was startlingly accurate. "And what do you think?" "I think you're both being silly. Mama liked you before she knew about your money, and you started caring about the centers before you cared about Mama. So it's all mixed up together in a good way." At that moment, Ayana approached them, looking radiant in a simple but elegant dress that Lydia had helped her pick out. "What are you two conspiring about over here?" "Ms. Lydia has something important to ask you," Zoe announced, then skipped away toward the dessert table with suspicious timing. Ayana raised an eyebrow. "Oh really?" Lydia felt suddenly nervous, like a teenager asking someone to prom. "Actually, I do have something to ask you. But maybe we could go somewhere more private?" They found a quiet balcony overlooking the city. The lights of Chicago spread out below them, including the neighborhoods where their 5 centers served families every day. "So," Ayana said, leaning against the railing, "what did you want to ask?" Lydia had rehearsed this conversation a dozen times, but now all her careful words disappeared. "I love you." Ayana's smile was radiant. "I love you too. And I love Zoe and I love what we've built together and I know this might sound crazy but—" "Lydia." "Yes." "Are you asking me to marry you?" "Yes. I mean if you want to." I know it's complicated with the foundation and the business relationships, and I don't want you to feel pressured. Ayana silenced her with a kiss that tasted like champagne and possibility. Yes, she whispered against Lydia's lips. Yes to all of it. From inside the ballroom came the sound of Zoe's delighted squeal, followed by applause. They looked through the glass doors to see the 10-year-old jumping up and down, having apparently been watching the whole conversation. I think someone approves, Lydia said. She's been planning this longer than either of us have. They walked back into the ballroom hand in hand, to find Zoe standing on a chair addressing the entire reception. Excuse me everyone. My mama and Ms. Lydia just got engaged. Now we're going to be a real family and build centers all over Chicago and maybe the whole world. The applause was deafening. Guests surrounded them with congratulations, but Lydia only had eyes for Ayana and Zoe. Her family. The family she'd never thought she wanted and now couldn't imagine living without. Later that night, in Ayana's apartment, soon to be their apartment, they sat on the couch while Zoe showed them her latest drawings. She'd been working on a series about their story, from the chess game to the centers to tonight's engagement. This one is my favorite, she said, holding up a picture of 3 figures in front of a building labeled Little Champions. All 3 were holding hands, and the building was surrounded by dozens of small figures representing the children and families they served. What's the title? Lydia asked. The Checkmate of Love, Zoe announced proudly. Because sometimes when you lose, you actually win the best thing ever. Ayana laughed. Where did you learn to be so wise? From you, Mama. And from Ms. Lydia. And from all the kids at the centers who taught me that families come in lots of different shapes. As they tucked Zoe into bed that night, she had one final question. Are we rich now? Lydia and Ayana exchanged glances, remembering a similar question from 2 years ago. Yes, baby, Ayana said. We're very, very rich. In money? In everything that matters, Lydia added. Good. Because money is nice but love is better. And we have so much love that we can share it with hundreds of families. After Zoe fell asleep, Lydia and Ayana sat on the small balcony, planning their future. The wedding would be simple, held at the original Little Champions Center with all the children and families they served. The honeymoon would be a working trip to visit successful childcare models in other cities. No regrets about that chess game? Ayana asked, leaning against Lydia's shoulder. Only one. What's that? I wish I'd lost sooner. Think of all the time we could have had together. We have all the time in the world now. Below them, the city hummed with late-night energy. Somewhere out there, working mothers were finishing late shifts, knowing their children were safe and loved. Early morning workers were getting rest, confident that quality care would be available when they needed it. And in 5 neighborhoods across Chicago, Little Champions centers stood ready to welcome families tomorrow, and every day after that. Lydia had spent her whole life trying to win at everything. But the greatest victory of her life had started with the most beautiful defeat. 2 moves on a chessboard that had led to a love deeper than she'd ever imagined possible. Checkmate, she whispered into the night air. Checkmate, Ayana agreed. And this time they'd both won. Dear amazing viewers, thank you so much for joining us on this incredible journey from a chess game to forever love. Lydia and Ayana's story shows us that sometimes our biggest failures can lead to our greatest victories. What do you think was the real turning point in their relationship? Was it when Lydia started visiting the center regularly, when she learned to put the children first, or maybe when she finally stopped trying to solve everything with money? Have you ever had a moment where losing something actually led you to something better? Or maybe a time when someone surprised you in a way that completely changed your perspective? And here's the big question. Do you believe Lydia would have fallen in love with Ayana if they'd met any other way, or was that chess game humiliation exactly what she needed to see Ayana's true character? Share your thoughts in the comments below. We love hearing your stories and opinions about these heartwarming journeys. Red Heart.